Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you from our offices in the United States on the day when Tucker Carlson is going to be releasing at 6 p.m. Eastern Time this evening his unprecedented interview with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. I now have with us a man in Moscow, live, Leonid Sevastianov. I've known him for many years, and he's been working to try to bring some sort of understanding and peace in this terrible situation of war. People are so concerned about this interview that they are asking that Tucker Carlson not be allowed to return to the United States because he's speaking with the leader of the party which is invading Ukraine. And this war is of great concern to Pope Francis, who has asked Leonid to be a back channel for him back to the Russians. Leonid, I would like to invite you on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bob, for inviting me.
Leonid, it's a very exciting and dangerous and hopeful moment in all directions. February 8th, 2024, Tucker Carlson is in Moscow. His interview will be released at 6 p.m. What can you comment about it? What's the mood there in Moscow?
Well, we knew about him coming just basically the day when he take the interview, and I think that the day when he appeared on his Twitter account. So, and then it will be pushed through all the Russian media, through all Russian TV channels. So, and from there, we knew that he's here. But my office is not far from Kremlin. It's only 300 meters. So, and actually, I saw his car getting into the presidential administration. So basically, it was actually two cars, like his sedan, and then it was the back, little kind of small bus, black one. I think that with his equipment needed. So, and apparently he took this interview. I don't know when it was exactly, because actually Putin, he's sitting in Kremlin, but he was getting into presidential administration. So I'm not sure where actually the interview was filmed exactly, whether in which studio. Anyway, yes. So and people were kind of waiting for appearance of his interview, and apparently he's trying. He promised to be independent, and he just like actually in all his pre-interview announcement he was quite, pro-Western in the sense of using the words. He was not kind of, pro-Russian in his terms that he was like using. For instance, he was like talking about Russian invasion, Russian, and in Russia, actually, you're not allowed to say Russian invasion. So, but he was using this kind of, pro-Western words. So, and actually, he promised that it will be independent. So, and his real interest is just to put the view of Putin on this war, and I guess also on the Russian and West relationship to primarily to Americans and then to whole world. So apparently he's saying that people in the West they don't see the appropriate news and that the news about Russia uncensored. So he basically said that he will be kind of, talking directly to Putin and putting his direct view. So,
Okay, so you are not a newcomer to these uh, problems of talking between East and West. You are a Russian Orthodox. You were born in Russia and you experienced communism. This is an image of Red Square. The prior image was the Kremlin, of course. And you've also gone to Rome, and you're a kind of interesting figure because you've visited and gotten to know Pope Francis. And
yes,
you, in addition, you were just there last week,
yes,
and you spent an hour with Pope Francis. And this is a photo. This is just
yes.
8 or 9 days ago, January
Mhm,
30th.
mhm.
Pope Francis is very concerned. Maybe you can summarize what his concern is and what does he want you to do.
Well, he's concerned, actually, he's concerned not only now, but for last 2 years, that this conflict will become the Third World War. And actually, in some way, he thinks that the Third World War is going on
Yeah,
already. That is only not spread the way it could be spread. And this is what he's afraid. I mean, of course, he's afraid of the use of the nuclear weapons. He's afraid that more countries will be involved. He's afraid that more territory will be hit by that. So, and his view is like to stop with this, or I mean, at least to make some kind of the this even if it will not be found the solution, but at least we need to stop fighting each other. So this is basically his view on it. And then he thinks that the moment we stop fighting each other, then the solution will arrive on the spot. So his kind of mission and his mission here that he's entrusted to me is to promote this vision, to promote that we need to stop fighting each other, first of all. And this is why he is not very much in favor of weapons, and he thinks that this war is also very much influenced by the weapon production companies. That production companies are interested that this war is going on
right.
for many reasons, because they make money, because they just like try new weaponry, they study the use of weapons and so on. So he basically thinks that the men of the goodwill, they should understand what's going on, and they some way should be detached from manipulation, like about the patriotism and so on and so on, and just to see that all the evil that is going on now, and as Christians, just to stop doing that.
Okay.
So basically, he called to the people on whom it can be, on whom it depend, of course, to do everything possible to stop fighting.
And what would be? I think you mentioned to me that he has a proposal. Would he was going to invite people actually to have peace talks?
Yes, he has a proposal. No, firstly, he just he had the and actually he thought that his main kind of problem would be to convince Russians to come to the peace table. And in some way, strangely enough, but Russians are willing to go to negotiate, and they're willing to
But,
see Pope as a mediator in
but
negotiation.
Leonid, why are the Russians willing? What is
Well, it's like,
changed?
well, I mean, we don't know, just like, I mean, historians probably will tell us that we don't have all data to analyze that. I
Yeah,
mean, we don't have all the data just actually to understand what might happen actually, and what happened and where it brought us all. I mean, but I can only make the to point out the fact that actually Russians are willing to start negotiation, and they actually send all the proposals to Pope, and
oh,
actually they want Pope to be intermediary and just like to use the Vatican as the mediation place. So, and Pope, he thought that the most difficult thing would be to convince Russians. And actually, in this way, he did his mission, and he actually already convinced the Russians. So it was not easy. You remember from beginning, and Pope he did his job in some way. So now his job is also to convince, let's say, Western part or Ukraine to do the same. So, but he understands the problem that Ukraine faces. So Ukraine faces, I mean, all economic problems related to the war. There is too much, the economy is too much dependent on the war, because like unfortunately their manufacture are destroyed, their productions like civil productions are destroyed, and so on and so on. So now they're very much dependent on the provision from the West for their kind of military, if the West even supporting their pension, supporting
right.
their social budget system, whatever. So what the Ukraine is afraid that the moment when they say, well, we agreed to start negotiation, that moment finances will be stopped from the
I
West,
see.
and
So you
they
say,
will be in economic disaster.
uh,
And so this is the now how, the problem, that to convince the West to guarantee Ukraine, to support financially, I mean, their
yes.
social structure, and then they will be kind of free to announce that they're also kind of capable to start negotiation. So this is the one of the biggest problems. Also, the Pope now to convince, like, to the West not to pay for the weapons, but to pay for the budget. I mean, social budget, and in some way, Ukraine should understand that with starting a negotiation, they will get more economical benefits than
Okay.
from the war.
So
So this,
if I were to summarize what you said, the Ukrainians cannot begin a peace process because they are addicted or almost linked so closely to all the war expenses. Their economy has been changed into a war economy, and so it's difficult to initiate any talking because it's opposed to their economic interests, which are all connected now with the war. And
yeah.
then, but I wanted to ask, you have this kind of back channel. You've been meeting with the Pope for several years. Your wife is an opera singer, and she gave a
Mhm.
concert in Rome, and you met the Pope at that time in 2013. The Pope liked you, met you again and again. This was before the war began, long before. The war
Mhm.
has now gone on for 2 years. Here you are with your little daughter,
Mhm.
Natalia.
She's not that little anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's already 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tucker Carlson initiates a conversation with Putin. It will be aired tonight. All over the West, people are concerned that it will be a support to Putin and that it's a kind of traitorous act on the part of Tucker to initiate talking. What is your view? And do you have any contacts at all, truly, in the Kremlin or circles of the Kremlin? Do you talk to someone in Moscow as well as someone in Rome so that you can know that Russia is actually open to peace talks?
Well, firstly, I saw a few show of the journalist. So he's. I don't think that he's that pro Putin guy. I mean, he has his different view. Probably it's like he's more Republican, so it's kind of he's has Republican view. But I mean, in all the terminology that he's using, he's not. You cannot say that he's pro-Russian or that he's pro.
Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, I'm talking about his about talking
So
Carlson.
you
Yeah,
don't see him as a kind of pro-Russian stooge of
yeah.
some
I
sort.
don't. No, no. Well, yes, and actually, in some way, people say that Trump is pro-Russian. He's not. I mean, Trump made more restrictions to Russia and more sanctions to Russia than anyone before.
So,
So
so
Trump.
you're
I mean,
yeah,
yeah.
you're saying we don't really understand how everything is being presented to us, including Trump and Tucker Carlson now, by what is our press and deep state.
Well, at least look, I just can tell you that I'm just because of my job profession. I mean, so I just watching different shows. I mean, a Russian show as well, and mostly in political TV show, like guy like probably you know him, Vladimir Solovyov, the most famous one. So, and the speakers whom he is inviting. So they usually say that actually when Trump will arrive to the power, it will be much harder for us, that Trump actually he will be more kind of effective against us, something like that. So I don't think that Trump is pro-Russian. I mean, of course, he has his own agenda, and I don't think that for Russia it would be
Well,
any easier
okay, well
than Trump
let's
arrives. So
I think everyone wants to know what Putin thinks, but we also want a context for this interview tonight because we're all concerned. This war has gone on 2 years. What does it signify? Is Russia's aim to take all of Ukraine and then go into all of Western Europe and conquer the
yeah.
world? Or is Russia really frightened and worried that NATO will encircle Russia? And I wanted to go into this as you are a Russian
Yeah.
and you were born.
Well, I remember because I remember day by day or probably hour per hour. I mean, this last 2 years and days before, months before this kind of tragedy started. So, and I remember the main kind of the main problem that actually Russia saw from kind of NATO kind of spread was the missiles. So they were afraid. Yeah. So they were,
missiles being brought. If Ukraine became a part of NATO, they would missiles. They would
so
come.
This is the main. But on the other hand, these missiles are coming now. So the missiles that they were afraid of, they're coming now, and they are capable to shut them down, put them down. So my point is that this war, in some way, and why they're interested to negotiate, in some way, with this war, they realizing that actually kind of their fears are not as important, because they kind of, with their technology, they knew and practiced how to control this possible threat. So in some way, I would say that Russia, at least what I hear, at least what I watch, in some way, Russia is much less afraid of NATO now than it used before this kind of military, whatever.
This is an
so
important.
My point is that this is why they kind of feel less, threat probably that coming from Ukraine, and this is probably they would interested to stop where it is. So I don't see any indication, at least. I saw it before, but a year ago, whatever. So I don't see any indication right now that they're interested to go forward, just like to spread territory, just like to take more territory and so on. So, and somehow, yes, they just like, I deeply believe that they are really, right now, I'm talking about today, that they're interested to start negotiation. So, it's question why, but I can only tell the fact.
Okay.
And Pope also he think that this moment should be used, because we don't know what will happen a month from now, just a year from now. But if there is this situation, he thinks that it's just like time to start negotiation. And it doesn't mean, when talking about also Zelensky plan, famous Zelensky plan, whatever. So Pope say that when we just like say to sit at the negotiation table, it does not mean that we take any part. Also Zelensky can express all his view and put all his view on the table. Before sitting at the table, all his view is just kind of useless, because you don't put it, you don't express it to Russians. You don't hear any feedback from Russians. So it's kind of useless to have any peace plan unless you go at the table and just like to discuss. So this is kind of vision of the Pope. Anyone has his own view. Let's sit on the table and maybe you succeed.
Okay. So, and we have a comment here from Jeffrey Reardon, who speaks about you as this guy, you, Leonid. Lost all credibility when you called Tucker a Republican voice. Tucker talks truth, which is extremely dangerous for most people, in meaning that the Republicans are now regarded also as Republicans in name only, which the initials of that, RINO, are Rhino. So they are saying many of our Republicans are only in name Republicans, and the true conservatives, which Tucker is representing, are not even represented any longer in the Republican Party. But
I'm sorry, I don't know all the just political situation in America. I've been there actually in the beginning of December in America. I've been like few days there, but Leonid,
it's okay. But what did you didn't tell us? I know you were in America in December and you had top level meetings, but I don't know exactly what was said and how serious those meetings were. Can you tell us that?
No, because the meetings, they were kind of private, so they're not official. Maybe because of that, I will not put the names on the table because I don't have.
Well, may I ask you one name of our?
I mean, on this, I will not confront and will not, can I say, neglect.
But someone in our diplomacy.
Oh, yes, primarily, yeah, meeting people of diplomacy. So basically, I just like my mission kind of was like to meet different people and just to express the pop view, and also kind of also my view, because my view is that this war is not beneficial for no one. I
Okay.
mean, everyone are losing actually. I don't see anyone winning, and so I'm
All right.
trying to be, politically correct because I'm staying also in Moscow. I'm restricted by probably a law that actually some of them I don't know. So I'm just like will be very correct.
All right.
So so everyone is losing, no one is winning, and
Right.
probably someone else is winning that we don't want to mention.
Well,
And this is why it's actually interest, very big interest of United States also to finish this conflict as soon as possible, and to go forward,
well, we
just
have
like
a
to rebuild some breaches, the breaches that we can rebuild, repair the breaches that we can repair. Because I mean, in some way, some people say, well, Ukraine losing. Well, Ukraine actually also in some way, well, won.
oh,
So they kind of defended what they wanted. I don't know, their freedom, or they defended what they wanted. So it's time. I mean, also they can claim that they also on the kind of they're not losers.
well,
They can start also negotiation, thinking they achieve something what they
yeah.
wanted.
No,
So
you're
they
you're making some good points, Leonid, but I really want to focus in. You're kind of a special agent of some sort. You've seen actually people in the Kremlin. You know people. You've mentioned to me in the past that you worked at Rosatom, and one of the leaders of that is a personal friend of Putin. So you have some contacts. You
well, I'm just, well, let's say I just like have the contact. I don't have military contact. I don't have any, how we call it, security services or intelligent contact whatsoever. From none of the parts. I don't contact to Russian security services, to American security services. It's like I tell you with all responsibility. And actually, I also, you call me agent, so I can only, I will be, I can accept that if you call me agent of Pope, and it's fine for me.
okay? The agent
I
of
mean, calling of agent of Pope is, I will bear with that, and I will confront that. So,
okay. So you are
none of agent.
you
Yeah,
are a Russian,
yeah.
and you are an agent of Pope Francis.
Well,
And
I would not mind to be called like that. Let me put it this way.
okay, and we Medvedev the other day said the Russians
Yeah.
would resort to nuclear weapons if they felt they were being attacked or were attacked if NATO sends further missiles in and strikes Russia, which was a clear sign of the seriousness that we are almost in a desperate spot. We're without talks on the eve of use of nuclear weapons, which would be disastrous for all of us. That is the reason why each of us is thinking, well, this interview that Tucker is doing, or even our conversation with you and your conversation with Pope Francis, is there any straw in the wind here that could lead to some good conclusion? Because we're all afraid.
Well, the nuclear weapons, of course, they're very, how to say, dangerous. Statistically speaking, and mathematically.
Leonid, you just froze there for a moment, and I think we're going to have to restart so we can connect your voice with your image. Um,
You okay?
yes,
Yeah. So,
great.
I mean, statistically speaking, if we have the nukes, one day they will fight. It's like statistically in
Yes,
sense of that.
if
It
we have
depends
a
on the time.
if man has a weapon, he uses it.
Yeah, it's depending on the time. I mean, if now, not now in 100 years, it's not in 100 years, 1,000 years. So, I mean, from mathematic statistic point of view, it will be used if you have it as in the matter of the time. So, I mean, my point is that always very dangerous. So it's dangerous. I mean, the
Well,
thing that we have, and this is, of course, I mean, in some way, we need to use different arms. So the arms of diplomacy is always more powerful. And actually, who can confirm historically that is the Holy See and the in some way Roman Church. I mean, the Pope, because even they lost whole their country. They lost whole their territory in 1870,
Yes.
but they just like only get more influence in the
Yes.
world. This is my view, and this is why Pope has all the right to judge, to criticize, to propose, because with experience he do it with the experience. I mean,
Yes.
with the historical experience,
All right,
and
Leonid.
he can be intermediary. This is why he can be intermediary in the conflicts.
Yes, and I agree with you completely. I've been watching the Vatican for 30 years. I saw John Paul work with Ronald Reagan, the end of the Soviet Union with Mikhail Gorbachev, and then I watched these more recent events. But the question now, really, and we're going to bring in another guest. It's a leading journalist and commentator from Denmark, representing Western Europe. So we have you in Moscow live, and we have Iben Thranholm in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I'm in Virginia in the United States. And we're going to try to go further into this question of can there be peace talks and what need there is and what forces are against them and the importance of Tucker Carlson's interview tonight with Vladimir Putin. And we're going to look at this war, and we're, of course, devastated that thousands and tens of thousands of men, and young men particularly, have lost their lives, been wounded. So we're looking for peace, and we're wondering, can Russia, which was for 70 years communist, and then Europe was split into two parts, can become part again of the West, or the West can include Russia, or does the West itself need to make a reformation from a kind of woke madness that's consuming us? And how can we go forward without entering into nuclear war? These are the questions that I want to face. Iben, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you enjoying our conversation?
Well, I have been listening very carefully. And, I think that Tucker Carlson is a hero. I think he's very courageous. But lately, I've been thinking after I got the news that he was going to Moscow and he was doing this interview with Putin, that if Tucker Carlson is not on I would say, God-given or God-protected mission, a mission from God, I think he's out to destroy himself. And I'm very concerned about what he's doing, because I did the same thing myself 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. I traveled to Moscow because I wanted to see with my own eyes, like Tucker Carlson is doing now, how Christianity was re-emerging in Russia, because I heard about it, and I am a theologian, I'm a political and religious commentator, so I was very curious to go to Moscow and to Russia to see with my own eyes and then bring the truth to people in the West. And I did that because what I saw was, today I read on Twitter or X that Tucker Carlson is around in Moscow. He's going to supermarkets, he's going to restaurants, and he's very, very happy to see that Russia is something completely different from what he was told in the United States. And I had exactly the same experience. I saw icons, above the gates into Kremlin on the Red Square. I saw Christian symbols all over the public arena. And that was fantastic, coming from Scandinavia, where we have been trying to remove all Christian symbols from our public sphere. So I wrote and wrote and wrote. But when I came back, people did not believe me. They simply told me that I had become a Kremlin agent. Like now, I heard today that Hillary Clinton was telling some kind of news outlet that Tucker Carlson was now just a useful idiot for Putin. And I was told exactly the same. People started to ask me, so how much did you get paid from the Kremlin to write those articles? I got fired. Even though I was a very, very popular columnist in one of our newspapers here in Denmark, they fired me because I wrote a column about what I saw in Moscow. I think the title was "Moscow is the New Manhattan," because the freedom I experienced as a Christian in Russia was so much bigger than was so much bigger than the freedom that I enjoyed in the West, which was getting more and more restricted. But people did not believe me. And now I'm very curious to see tonight what the interview is all about. But I'm not sure that people will believe what is being said in the interview, because people simply are completely blinded, they're brainwashed. So my experience is just that even though I did exactly the same as Tucker Carlson is doing, even though I did not interview Putin, even though I was working on it actually, I just met people who had no openness to believe the truth. And so I'm very concerned about what's going on. And I'm very, very curious to see how this is going to be received in the West, because I think that Tucker Carlson is really heading for trouble unless there is some kind of providential mission, that he's doing this providential task because he's paving the way for peace talks. I don't know. But if not, I think he's in trouble.
Well, I think that's part of the reason we're doing this podcast. Our small means is trying to support him, a man seeking truth, a man seeking to publish what a journalist should publish, which is truth. And I don't think anyone knows about Leonid. So I think, and very few people know about you having tried to report on Russia in a kind of defense of Russian Christian faith and Russian participation in Western culture. So this whole effort now, since the fall of the Soviet Union, more than 30 years, first for 15 years, we were kind of slowly embracing Russia. And for the last 15 years, we've been trying to push Russia away again. Our probable future is either to reestablish friendship with Russia or to have a much greater war with Russia. And therefore, we are right on the cusp of that tonight with this interview. Leonid, your thoughts?
Sure. Well, yes, you are totally right, Bob. And actually, you are, I would say, big expert in Russia, because I knew you because you were interested in putting the bridges with Russia. I mean, years ago, I met you in Rome in 2001. You hear me?
Yes.
So, okay, sorry. So you're a big expert on Russia and on the Russia relationship. So your analysis is always correct.
I would not say I'm an expert. I just, I did wish to go and see for myself, just like Iben and just like Tucker Carlson. And I think all of us should look with our own eyes. And we are all under a haze of journalism and the propaganda, which is under financial interests, which are not in the interest of our children and our children's children. And we don't want them to be radioactively inhabiting a world that's been destroyed. And we're willing to continue this conversation.
So in 2 days, I mean, actually in 3 days, on February 11, we will celebrate 95 years anniversary of the birth of Vatican. So it was kind of established in 1929.
Yes.
And I think personally, and I think that Pope Francis probably would think the same, but he is very spiritual and humble. He would not express that. I think that we need to promote the Vatican as the symbol of unification of different countries. Independently from their even religious point of view or cultural point of view. So in my view is on the Western society, including Russia, that all of our culture are coming from the Roman Empire heritage, including Russia, because Russia with their language that we are taught Rome, that our czars were coming from the emperors and so on. So Russia also perceives itself culturally as part of the West. So, and the Vatican, Holy See, and Pope himself are symbol of this kind of Roman heritage. And in some way, the Vatican can promote a new mission, a mission of putting the countries of different views, economical view, religious view, cultural view, all together. And in some way, this is my dream, I would say. So unfortunately, United Nations is kind of failing its mission. So, and the Vatican can take this mission and to bring it forward. So let's say, of course, the Vatican right now is small territory, but it can enlarge. And let's say that on the territory of the Vatican will be kind of, all religious leaders, they will be getting the Vatican citizenship and their representation in the Vatican. And even all country leaders can become automatically the citizen of Vatican. So I'm trying to say that we need to have some kind of, of course, it's like in some way fairy tales, but we need to have a vision. So the Vatican can be the place where everyone comes and talk, and it's the place is free from war and free from weapons. And in some way, the problem of United Nations, the main problem of United Nations is that they did not elaborate the mechanism when the Security Council members are in the war, how to put them in negotiation. Right. So there is no mechanism. So it can be new mechanism that Vatican will be the place that will be inviting the Security Council members for negotiation.
Okay, let's stop there, Leonid. I would first say, and I'm going to bring you in, Iben, I have some concern about this idea of a kind of global religious syncretism.
Well, it's not about religion. No, sorry, I maybe interrupted. It's not about religion.
Okay.
It's not about syncretism. It's like we're talking about Vatican as the country, as in some way independent country. And the Vatican as the country invite representatives of different religion. It does not mean that the Roman Catholic Church is changing.
No.
Or it does not mean that we have a new super religion. It only means that there is a place for negotiation and the presence of all religion and all the countries. So to establish a new kind of global round table, I would say, global round table, where the people with different view can always talk on the daily basis.
So I'll pose this and throw it to you, Iben. Leonid is saying the United Nations has failed. It's an idea of stopping war by having world's nations send representatives and meet in New York City, but it hasn't stopped this war and it hasn't stopped other wars. He's proposing the idea of a place like the Vatican as a super partes, above the parts of a sort of non-partisan place where people could come, a kind of replacement of the United Nations, and doing so in the vigil of a third nuclear war that, whether or not we really believe it, is imminent. In even the words of the former president of Russia the other day, that Russia would resort to nuclear weapons. So how do you feel as you hear all of these remarks?
Well, of course, it could be wonderful if the Vatican could be a meeting point for peace negotiations. But I don't think that should be the priority of the Vatican right now. And I think that the church should wake up. Pope Francis should really wake up, because he's not using the most powerful weapon that he has, which is the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The Pope has not done that yet. I mean, she asked, 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, that the Pope, together with all the bishops, would do this to stop wars. And not yet one Pope. I mean, there is some kind of, there is people who believe that John Paul II did it, but we're not sure whether he did it correctly. So it won't hurt if Pope Francis would do it again. So I think Pope Francis, if he's really concerned about peace, this is what he should do right now. Do it the way Our Lady told the Pope to do it. That should be our first priority, because the Pope is not a politician. He is the Pope. It's good if he sort of initiate peace talks, but he should be a man of the spiritual dimension in all this. And this is a spiritual battle, I would say. It is a spiritual battle. It is a battle between a completely de-Christianized culture, which is the Western culture, and Russian culture, which is now becoming a very orthodox, traditional Christian culture. So there is this spiritual aspect of everything. And I guess deep down, this is what it's all about. So the Pope should be concerned about that and let politicians, or try to, pray for politicians to come to terms with the situation and avoid war. But the strongest weapon we have is prayer, and that's why the Pope should lead the prayer, and he should consecrate Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary to prosper peace. But this is not what the Vatican is doing right now. They're concerned about, talking about, this politician and trying to, make political peace negotiation. I'm not against it, but it should not be the first priority of the Pope. It should be prayer and the spiritual aspect of this conflict.
Well, Iben, once again, you set us back on the right course. And there was a comment I wanted to come back to, if I could, from our producer. Leonid, good to see you back. Sometimes you're having a slight freezing in your video, but we very much appreciate all of our viewers. We would like you to like the program, and we would like you to tell your friends, and we would like to grow, and we come back in coming days and weeks as these events continue. And Janet Kilb, this was from Facebook, and we very much take seriously what you just wrote. You are very, with capital letters, very disappointed that you are empowering a person such as Carlson. So you don't like Carlson, to bring his interview of a leader who constantly lies, Putin. So you don't like Putin. Where is your allegiance to Our Lady of Fatima in her messages? Exclamation point. Just as you were writing that and posting that, Iben took us back directly to Our Lady of Fatima and to the desire to consecrate Russia.
Well, Bob, can I say something to your viewer? Actually, when Putin met Pope Francis some years back in Rome, he wanted to talk about Fatima. He was interested in Fatima. Putin wanted to know more about Fatima. And I know from a source in Rome who was present at the meeting between the Pope and Putin. Putin was told by the Vatican officials, we will not talk about Fatima. So I don't know why this was said, but Putin showed an interest. So I think, to be fair, your viewers should know that Putin wanted to talk about Fatima. He wanted to know more about it.
Well, so the real question is somehow Russia been treated by Western finance and power, military and otherwise, in a way that has lost millions of people, turned it into a kind of exemplary police state for 70 years. Leonid, you were born there. And then now in the past 30 years, when it kind of said that we're finished with communism, we want to be re-entered into the West, we first started to embrace them. And now we are about to cancel them, as it were, from Europe and from human history. Leonid, look, I wanted to show our readers where you were born, where that red line goes. That town is Rostov-on-Don.
Yeah, it's right on the border where there is a conflict now.
Yeah,
so this region is like historically all this region, including if you see Mariupol, Donetsk, all this region, Lugansk, Rostov, it was the region of the Don Cossacks.
And you are a Cossack, aren't you?
Yes, I am, but the Don Cossacks, they were, Tolstoy in some way, he said that, famous writer Tolstoy, he said in one of his books that Russia was created by Cossacks, because the Cossacks, they were moving and spreading and bringing like pieces of Russia together. So, but by the start of the Civil War, 100 years ago, the Cossacks mainly, they were the main part of the White Army, so against the Bolsheviks, and they lost. So they lost, and then their territory was divided. So, and all Cossacks, they were kind of eliminated in some way. So it was kind of actually a law, a kind of genocide law in 1919 against of Cossacks, and their country was even divided. So part of the Ukraine right now, Donetsk, Lugansk, it was a part of this Cossack state. So they put part of the so-called Kazakhia or whatever part to Ukraine, but part they switched to Russia. So, and there is no anymore state, Cossack state, and there are no Cossacks, real Cossacks, because lots of them they run to the West, and they actually stayed in the West, and they kind of assimilated. So, and I now, this is why I understand this war very well, because it's kind of in some way my neighborhood. So, so I feel that it's terrible and it should be stopped. So even if I have all the historical sentiments, because my father was dissident, my grandfather, he was like actually part of the White Army. He only survived. The rest of his brothers and sisters, they died in the Civil War. So, but still, I mean, I should be somehow, just like into opposition. But I'm Christian, and I just want reconciliation. And I think that this war should be stopped. This is all my message.
Okay, well, let's go into that. A lot of people don't believe it. You will hear neoconservatives in America say it's a facade and a farce, that there's a proclamation, as Iben said, that Russia is returning to faith. You just said you are a Christian. You told me a moving story once about your childhood. Your father was a leader of one of the old believer communities. You went to a Russian school. Someone asked you a question about God. You gave an answer, and everyone laughed at you. Can you tell us that story?
Well, fortunately enough, I went to this school in 1985. So right before the perestroika started. So maybe it was not as in time of Stalin. So, but still, it was very strict. So, for instance, you could not actually, by the law in some way, you could not believe in God. So you could not openly saying that you believe in God, and you could not go to church and so on and so on. And for instance, but more than that, I refused to be a young pioneer. Young pioneer, this first step in
pioneer, a young pioneer. That was the kind of the Cub Scouts of the Soviets.
Yeah, I mean, the first step in the Communist Party. So, and I refused that. Not only me, but all my family, my brothers and sisters. We are 8 together. I mean, my father and mother created 8 babies. So, and all of us, we refuse to be young pioneers because we say that your party is against of the Christian belief. So, and I cannot be, it will be, for me, it will be kind of, lie. I mean, if I join, and but I do believe in God. And so, and I was actually persecuted. So I was also, I mean, if the Soviet Union was not collapsed, well, the best thing what would happen to me. So I would never find any job. I probably would be just like, I don't know, cleaning the streets, because really I could not, because I was openly Christian. And my persecution in the school would continue. So, and they were pushing, for instance, I don't know, they were asking school friends to beat me. The teacher was at the blackboard saying, "Oh, look at this crazy guy, he's believing God, ha ha ha," just, and putting, for instance, I was always carrying the cross on me, and they were just trying to put it away, just like saying that you need to put it away, or we will expel you from the church. They were bringing my parents to the school, where they were coming to our house, searching for the icons, searching for the books, because we were not allowed to keep the books, religious books, and so on. So I went through all this. So I'm very skeptical about communist time. I'm very skeptical about Soviet Union. So I'm not kind of pro-Putin guy in some way that you probably think. And this is why my opinion is very valuable, because my opinion is, notwithstanding that, I mean, we need to stop this war, because this war is unhuman and nonsense, and the people are dying. And actually, when it's like, because it's right on the border with Russia, it's like Russians from Russia and Russians from Ukraine are dying right now. So if you just like hear who are in the front from Ukrainian parts, it's mostly Russian-speaking Ukrainians who just fighting against of Russians. In some way, it's like look like civil war. It's like look like the war 100 years ago, because like the same people whom actually I knew, because it's neighborhood. They were now fighting from Ukrainian parts against Russians, So it's kind of terrible, and I think that I'm doing what I can. I mean, my sources are limited, and I don't have that many means to promote the peace. But I mean, I'm also in some way using you to promote my message.
Well, here's
we need to stop it. It's time to stop it, really.
2 or 3 points, and we have a question: who is really profiting from this war? We can come to that. The first, I want to thank you for talking about your childhood, giving us a firsthand experience of the Soviet Union. Second, I want to thank you for showing us the cross. You wear the cross. And then, Iben, I think we have heard here a cry, stop this war. And it's involving all of Europe now. And people are trying to send weapons and weapons and weapons. Nobody wants to hear an idea of a peace negotiation because they feel it will be a sign of weakness. Young boys are dying by the thousands. Leonid has told us now that mostly are Russian-speaking Russians and Russian-speaking Ukrainians. And then someone threw the question up, who benefits from this war? But I do want to say, I agree, this war never should have begun. And there should have been a negotiation. They were trying at Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 to negotiate. Now we're into a war, and a war is...
Actually, excuse me, I will to not forget. So the Pope view that the negotiation just should continue, that it started 2 years ago in Istanbul or in Minsk. We can just like to continue negotiating, just like the conclusions they made 2 years ago. It could be rebrought, and discussed. So, excuse me, Bob, I interrupt.
No, I just wonder from the perspective of Western Europe and from a thoughtful Catholic writer, Iben, I think you could maybe shed some light on what is it all of us, all the listeners also, should really keep in mind here. What is happening?
Well, the hatred against Russia is simply too big. And that's what I felt when I returned from Russia and when I wrote my reports from how Christianity was reviving in Russia. I thought at least Christians and people of goodwill and, common sense would say, okay, I haven't been there, but you're a journalist, so you have looked into the sources and you have been there and you are describing what's going on. But they did not believe me. And there was this kind of demonic, I would say, sort of demonic hatred. And I'm thinking about a passage in scripture. And I want to read it aloud because I think what is happening in our time is that people has been blinded to the truth. They simply don't know. They can't see what is the truth. Even though you present the facts, they can't see it. And this is what is really dangerous in our world, because you see today all political conflicts are about lies or the truth, about fake news or real news. And this is so important, because we have a conflict with truth in our society. And this is what is really at stake. But I'm going to read this aloud. It's from the 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
Thank you.
And it is worth verse 9. It's about the coming of the Lord and the prelude to it. And it says here, but when the rebel comes, Satan will set to work. There will be all kinds of miracles and deceptive shows of signs and portents, and everything evil that can deceive those who are bound for destruction, because they would not grasp the love of the truth, which could have saved them. The reason why God is sending a power to delude them and to make them believe what is untrue, is to condemn all those who refuse to believe in the truth and chose wickedness instead. This is actually what is happening exactly. People are deluded, so they can't see the truth because they did not have love for the truth initially. And this is what's happening right now. So even though you present them with the facts, and this is why I hope that this interview will do something good in the world. But it could also be completely the opposite, that people are going to be even more angry because they don't understand what is the truth and they are deluded. And God allows this for some reason. Okay. So we are in a very, very difficult moment because we're dealing with a whole world or parts of the world who has been completely blinded. They don't know what is the truth anymore. And
I
this
would
is
like, I would like very much what you've just inserted scripture in, the word of God. And I would say among our readers, is there someone who could perhaps put up a suggestion? We do know Tucker's interview will come out tonight. We know there are threats that the European Union won't let him travel in Europe to come back from Russia. There was one man in America who, Bill Crystal, who said, quote, perhaps we need a total and complete shutdown of Tucker Carlson re-entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what is going on. Bill
Yes,
Crystal.
yes, exactly. And this is because people have lost the love of the truth. This is exactly what scripture says. They don't have anymore the love for truth. So because he's doing something that could make people understand what is the truth, of course he's going to be punished. And I would say I'm even afraid that he could get killed, honestly. Because it's a it's very powerful, and we're dealing with demonic powers. And that's why I hope that Tucker Carlson is protected by God, because otherwise he's really heading for something very dangerous, very troubled waters. And right now, I think because he's so successful, maybe he has the idea that he can walk on the water, so to say, that he can do whatever he wants because he has so many followers. And so did I when I went to Russia. But I was really punished for this. So that's why I'm telling you. And I think he is actually it's a very fine balance, because even though that he is a journalist, right now he's going into something which is very political, and he could easily be accused of being a propagandist, and which he has always been today. I mean, I saw even on his own, the people, the crowd of people who are following him. I mean, like 50% now says, well, he's just a traitor. We know exactly what's going on. So people don't believe him. And so the worst thing that could happen is that people start to misbelieve Tucker Carlson now, because they simply don't want to accept the truth, which is something that it could be really a very hard time for him that he's facing.
Well,
but I hope not.
That's a very dark and frightening picture. And I think the citation from scripture tells us we're in a spiritual battle. And I think the fact that we have a Russian-born old believer with us, but who was also a kind of modern person who knows how to take airplanes and use the internet and come on this podcast, and has visited Rome and knows Pope Francis, and actually lived in America, studied at Georgetown. This tells us that everything is possible if we can just talk and perhaps pray for some illumination to the truth of things, because so many things are hidden away, and secret powers are making money or designing our future for us. True Democrats and true free people have the right to talk and try to go closer to a better and more just and free world. We don't want the walls to come down again, iron curtains everywhere. Leonid?
Yes, I think both. So what we can do, and actually what Pope told me to do, he said that big things always start with very small. Well, he's referring this also to Jesuit order, that how it started. It started with very small group, and then it get very successful, and then it's like influence world to world. So my point is that all of us, we can do something about it. So we can be dedicated to the idea of peace, promoting the peace, and then we can somehow be successful. For instance, I would really, as to the friend, suggest you to start some kind of negotiation table. Suggest you to start some kind of round table. U.S. Urbi et Orbi. You have your magazine. You have your connections. Russians now. You Italian, American now. So you are reliable person. So you can be some way that guy who just can start with small things but it can spread. So this is what I recommend it to you.
So
Start your own round table, invite people, invite Russians, invite Ukrainians, invite Italians, Americans, and people need to talk. I completely agree that somehow devil he promoting the the lie, and he doesn't want people to talk, and he doesn't want people to be just like to see faces each of other, and actually new mean of communication when people actually don't talk anymore, they don't meet anymore, they just like using all the devices, and there is no human touch anymore. So we need to go back to the old time. You need to start your own kind of mission, your own movement. Sorry, maybe it's just like too romantic, but I think that is very
well,
practical, very pragmatic.
Leonid, I'm honored, and some readers will be surprised that you asked me to do this. But the last time someone tried to create a round table, it was King Arthur, and the table was smashed as they all fought against each other. So,
Well, I mean, you're very professional. You're very experienced. You're a journalist, and you're very
well,
you have you're very good in psychology, I would say, in the human psychology. So I
all right.
don't. Well, I saw a few of your projects, and I remember I came to United States in 2014 actually when this conflict started. So 10 years ago, actually, right from now. So and you organize beautiful event. The problem of all those events only that you do them like 1 2 days, then for a week you have the influence, and then it's somehow the influence go down. So you need to have something that it kind of continuous.
Well, maybe we can start with this program, and we'll come back and talk again
Well,
together.
this is also very good mean.
Yeah.
You need to use also Vatican infrastructure. I think that my idea that Vatican can become the place for this kind of roundtable. You can start using the infrastructure proposal.
Well, there's been some tension inside the church itself as people with different visions have tried to
I
take
know.
the church in different directions, ranging from my friend Archbishop Vigano to Pope Francis himself, who Archbishop Vigano has criticized. And I found myself caught in the middle, and I'm seeking a straight path forward to the end. So Iben, maybe you can help, because really your words tonight brought us back to Scripture, brought us back to truth. Maybe we are almost ready to end this program. I wonder, could you reflect on what you long for our society, for our children? You have a child, and for peace, not to have a nuclear war, and for truth, and not to have lies everywhere. I'd love to hear your reflection on that.
Well, as Christians, we know that some kind of utopia on this world where everything is completely perfect and we have peace and everybody can hold hands, like in John Lennon's song, Imagine, and it's going to be like paradise. It's not going to happen. And that our ultimate destination is not this world, but the next.
Wow.
And I actually think that Christians right now are losing sight of that because they're so completely absorbed in political discussions and, trying to initiate peace talks, which is good. I'm not against it. Don't get me wrong. But I think for Christians, we are on a pilgrimage here on this earth, and our final destination is actually heaven. And we should not lose sight of that. And that Christ has defeated all evil. But because still people have to make a choice on this earth, we see this very turbulent time because people have fallen away from the faith. So the West is actually just, sort of feeling the consequences of its own choice for the last decades, maybe 200 years, that they have completely turned their back on God. And now we see the consequences. So I think that what the churches actually should be occupied with is to evangelize and to make people convert to the faith. Then we will have peace, but not by only political discussions and peace negotiations without God. That's going to end in more chaos. So I think the role of the church right now is to preach the gospel and to pray.
Okay, and that in some way is a prophecy, perhaps, of the only way that this triumph of the Immaculate Heart shall come to pass, not by political negotiations where Russia would be converted for political reasons, but by a tremendous movement of the Spirit that would change hearts.
Exactly.
And then it would also change hearts in the West, because we need that as well, no doubt. And can we come back again and talk again? Leonid, maybe we'll come back after Tucker's interview comes out tonight.
Yes, I agree. Tomorrow at 10:30, I will be with you for another hour.
And Iben, do you have a chance to come back?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Then everyone, if we have said anything that's disturbed you, I apologize. And if we said anything that's inspired you, I'm very happy. Come back and watch us again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's pray for the peace tonight.
Oremus pro invicem. Let's pray for one another and for peace. Amen.